My mom looked me in the eye and said, "You should be grateful we're letting you stay here." 3 days later, I was gone. But what happened after I left? That's the part they never expected. My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm 24 years old, and this happened in Columbus, Ohio. I never thought I'd move back into my childhood home. Not after graduating, not after getting my own apartment, not after finally tasting independence. But life doesn't ask for permission before it humbles you. I lost my job in a corporate downsizing. One meeting, one handshake, one "we're restructuring," and suddenly I was unemployed with rent due in 2 weeks. My parents said I could come home. Just until you get back on your feet, my dad had told me over the phone. It wasn't supposed to feel like a step backward. At first, it didn't. The first week was almost comforting. Familiar walls, familiar smells, my old bedroom exactly the way I'd left it, my trophies still on the shelf, posters still taped to the closet door, but comfort has an expiration date when it comes with conditions. I started applying for jobs immediately. I picked up freelance work. I paid them $400 a month for utilities and groceries. I bought my own food anyway because I didn't want to be accused of taking too much. I stayed quiet. I stayed out of the way. I tried to make myself smaller, and still, something shifted. It started with little comments. "Still sleeping in? You know, when I was your age, must be nice not having real responsibilities." They said it casually, almost joking, but jokes repeated often enough stopped being jokes. Then came the dinner, the night everything cracked open. We were sitting at the table, my mom, Linda, my dad, Michael, and me. My sister, Emily, wasn't there. She lives 2 hours away, visits once every few months, still has her own key. My mom cut her chicken carefully, like she always does when she's about to say something uncomfortable. "You know," she began, "most people would be grateful we're letting them stay." The sentence landed heavier than she probably intended. "I am grateful," I said quietly. She sighed. "You don't act like it." I blinked. "What does that even mean?" "It means," she said, finally looking at me, "you walk around like this is still your home. Still your home." I felt something tighten in my chest. "This is my home," I said before I could stop myself. My dad cleared his throat. "No," he said calmly, "it's our home. You're staying here." The corrections stung more than yelling would have. I worked 2 part-time jobs by then. I handed them rent in cash every month. I cleaned the kitchen without being asked. I mowed the lawn. I fixed the Wi-Fi when it went down. But none of that made me a resident. It made me temporary. That's when my mom said it. "You should be grateful we're letting you stay." Letting me, like I was a guest, like I needed permission to exist in the house where I learned to walk. The room went quiet. I looked at my dad, waiting for him to soften it. He didn't. "You're 24, Daniel. This isn't permanent." Permanent, that word again. "I never said it was," I replied. "Then don't act like it is." Something inside me shifted at that moment. Not anger, not sadness, clarity. Because I realized something. It didn't matter how much I contributed. It didn't matter how quietly I existed. In their eyes, I was a burden being tolerated, and tolerance has a deadline. That night, I lay in my childhood bed staring at the ceiling. I thought about how I used to feel safe here. Now every wall felt like it was closing in. 3 days later, my mom said something else that sealed it. But that part, that's where everything really changed.
3 days after that dinner, the real blow came. I'd just gotten back from a job interview. It wasn't glamorous, entry-level marketing assistant at a small local firm, but it was something. I felt hopeful for the first time in weeks. When I walked into the house, I noticed my bedroom door was open. That wasn't normal. I stepped inside and froze. My mom was standing near my closet. My old comforter had been folded neatly on the chair. The bed sheets were stripped. "What's going on?" I asked. She didn't look guilty. She looked practical. "We're rearranging things," she said. "Rearranging what?" She sighed like I was being difficult. "Your sister is visiting next weekend. We're turning this back into a guest room." "Back into a guest room?" I stared at her. "My stuff is still in here." "Well," she said, brushing imaginary lint off the bed, "that's why we're talking about it now." "Talking about what?" She crossed her arms. "You can move your things to the basement room, or you can start figuring out somewhere else to go." There it was. Not even a family meeting this time, just logistics. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I genuinely couldn't believe what I was hearing. "The basement?" I asked. "It's finished," she said quickly. "There's a small window." A small window. I felt like I was negotiating for prison conditions. Dad appeared in the hallway behind her. "It's temporary," he added. "Emily has a right to feel comfortable when she visits." I stared at him. "And I don't? That's not what we're saying." But it was exactly what they were saying. My sister visited once every few months. She had her own apartment, her own job, her own life. But when she came home, she was still treated like royalty. Her childhood photos never came down. Her trophies never moved. Her room was preserved like a museum. Mine? Convertible space. Flexible. Replaceable.
You know, my mom said, her tone sharpening, most people would be grateful we're even offering the basement instead of telling you to leave. There it was again. Grateful, like I owed them for oxygen. Something inside me snapped, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Okay, I said. They both paused. Okay, what? My dad asked. I'll figure something out. My mom blinked. You don't need to overreact. I'm not. And that was the scariest part. I wasn't angry. I was calm. That night, I started looking at apartment listings. My bank account wasn't impressive. I had enough saved for a small deposit and maybe 2 months of rent if I was careful. It would be tight, uncomfortable, risky, but staying suddenly felt riskier. The next morning, I began packing. Not everything, just essentials. My laptop, clothes, important documents. My mom noticed the boxes first. You're being dramatic, she said flatly. No, I'm being realistic. Dad tried a different tactic. You're going to struggle out there. I'm already struggling in here. That shut him up. But here's the part that really changed everything. 2 nights later, I overheard them talking. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I had gone downstairs for water. Their voices floated from the kitchen. He'll come back, my dad said confidently. He won't make it a month, my mom replied. There was a small laugh. Not cruel, just certain. That certainty hurt more than anything else. They weren't worried about me. They weren't sad. They were sure I would fail. And that's when it stopped being about space. It stopped being about the basement. It became about respect. They didn't believe I could survive without them. They believed I needed them more than they needed me. And they were wrong. The next morning, I signed a lease for a tiny studio apartment across town. 600 square feet, old building, thin walls, but it was mine. When I told them, they both went quiet. You're really doing this? My mom asked. Yes. For what? Pride? For peace. That word landed differently. Peace. They didn't understand it, but I did. I moved out 2 days later. No dramatic goodbye, no hugs, just a quiet transfer of boxes from my childhood room to the trunk of my car. As I drove away, I expected panic. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Relief. But what happened after I left, that's when everything flipped, and that's where they finally realized what they really had lost.
The first night in my new place was quieter than I expected. No footsteps upstairs, no TV murmuring through the walls, no tension humming in the air like static. Just silence. I sat on the floor of my tiny studio apartment, 1 room, 1 window, a kitchenette that barely fit 2 people, and listened to my own breathing. The walls were bare, the mattress was still wrapped in plastic, my boxes were stacked unevenly in the corner. It wasn't comfortable, but it was calm, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was waiting to be corrected. The first few weeks were hard, harder than I let myself admit. Money was tight, I tracked every dollar, I cooked cheap meals, I walked instead of driving when I could. Some nights I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if my parents had been right. But even on my worst days, there was one thing I didn't feel anymore. Small. No one sighed when I entered a room, no one commented on my schedule, no one reminded me that my presence came with conditions. Slowly, something changed. I started sleeping better. I got a call back from the marketing firm, then a second interview, then an offer. It wasn't perfect, but it was stable, and it was mine. Weeks passed, then a month. My parents didn't call much. When they did, it was surface level. How's work? Did you figure out your internet? Is the area safe? No apologies, no reflection, no acknowledgement of what had happened. At first, that hurt more than I expected. I thought leaving would make them miss me, but they didn't. At least, not in the way I thought they would. Then the cracks started to show. It began with a phone call from my mom. Her voice was sharp with frustration. Did you take the folder with the insurance papers? No, I said. It's in the blue drawer, bottom shelf. There was a pause. Oh. She hadn't known where it was. A week later, my dad texted, how do I reset the Wi-Fi router? Then another text, what email is the streaming account under? Then another, do you remember the password for the utilities? I answered politely, briefly, like someone who no longer lived there. That's when it hit me. They didn't miss me. They missed what I did, the remembering, the fixing, the quiet support, the invisible labor. I had been holding their house together in ways they never noticed until I was gone. One Sunday evening, my mom called again. Her voice sounded different this time, less sharp, more tired. The house feels strange, she said. Strange how? Quieter, she admitted. Empty. I didn't rush to fill the silence. You could come over for dinner sometime, she added. Use your old room. My old room. Not your room. Not your home. I'm busy, I said. And for once, it wasn't a lie. My life had started filling in. Friends who checked in on me, coworkers who respected my time, a routine that didn't revolve around proving my worth. Even being alone felt better than being tolerated. A few weeks later, my sister Emily called. They say you've changed, she said cautiously. I have. They think you're distant. I am. She laughed awkwardly. You'll get over it. No, I said softly. I got through it. She didn't know what to say after that. The final moment came on an ordinary Tuesday. My phone rang. It was my dad. His voice sounded different, less certain. Your mom's been upset, he said. She thinks maybe we were too harsh. Maybe. I waited. Well, he asked, don't you want to talk about it? I did, but not the way he expected. I've built a life where I don't feel like I'm asking permission to exist, I said. I'm not giving that up. The silence on the other end stretched longer than usual. I hope you're happy, he finally said. I am, I replied, and I meant it. They never gave me a full apology, not really. But But they stopped making comments about gratitude. They stopped offering rooms with conditions. They stopped assuming I would come back. For the first time, they spoke to me like someone who could leave and stay gone. Not because I was angry, but because I respected myself enough to choose differently. Looking back now, I understand something I didn't then. Growing up isn't about proving you don't need anyone. It's about realizing you shouldn't have to earn your right to belong. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't staying and trying harder. Sometimes it's walking away and choosing yourself.